The BRM Cafe podcast is produced by Lead the Pack Consulting.
Welcome to BRM Cafe. I'm Peter Lijnse. I'm a leadership coach with Lead the Pack Consulting, and today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to. My guest is Dr. Jericha Hopson, Business Relationship Manager for Research at Tarleton State University, where she works inside the Office of Innovative Technology Solutions, aligning IT with research operations. With over a decade in higher education, she's been involved in everything from securing external funding to developing interdisciplinary programs and advancing disability resources. And on top of all of that, she also will be presenting at the next BRM Connect conference in September in Denver on network weaving and neuro-inclusion. And that's a very intriguing title, to be honest. Jericha, welcome to BRM Cafe. Really glad you're here. Do you have anything to add to this introduction?
I just wanted to say thank you. I was very excited when you reached out to me. It made me feel very special. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I have been at this university for a very long time, but whenever I started, I was a student. So that sometimes is important to know about my role as a BRM. Didn't start here as a BRM.
Yeah. So one thing based on your title for BRM Connect, but I also want to ask you that you've mentioned that you are neurodivergent. Can you talk a little bit more about that before we start?
Definitely. So I'm very passionate about disability culture and disability identity. And whenever I used to work in disability resources, a big part of what I would tell my students is that they're an expert on themselves. They're the only ones. And being able to accept their disability as part of their identity is very important. So I live on the spectrum, but I honestly think a lot of people live on the spectrum and they don't actually know. It's a fun place to be sometimes. Sometimes it's not super great. I also have anxiety and ADHD, and I'm dyslexic. So I kind of have a whole mixing pot going there. So a lot of those things have really all come together to create kind of a ball of nervousness at times. But I've learned to kind of live with what I have, what I've been given. And yeah, so that's kind of what got me started on, trying to help others as well.
So let's first dig into a little bit of your role. Your role sits at the intersection of IT and research and of course in the business relationship management side. What does it look like from day to day? What are you really doing to align IT with research operations, which is not an easy group to work with, to be honest?
Yeah, and a lot of times, IT sometimes is seen as a roadblock to research innovation. Not necessarily saying that there is a roadblock here or there was a roadblock here, but a lot of times in higher education, there's some friction there. So what I like to say is I'm the cartilage in the knee. We're all working together for the same thing. We all want to propel ourselves forward, but sometimes it can be a little painful if that cushion isn't there. So I serve as a translator between two areas who speak very different languages. So you have research who's concerned about methodology, securing external funding, deadline, and things like that. And then you have IT who's concerned about scalability, compliance. Compliance is a big one, and things like that. And so what I've been able to do is I didn't necessarily come into IT speaking the IT language. I came into IT speaking the academic language. And so I was able to bring that into this position and kind of serve as, for the researchers, they can see that, oh yeah, she understands, she speaks that language as well. And I actively listen to what their needs are and their frustrations are. Not that I have a solution for them, because sometimes what they're wanting me to do is buy things for them, and I can't do that. But I think what's important is that they know they have an advocate over here and someone who is at the table that they can't be at. The conversations that are happening in IT, they're being represented at those conversations. And so that's really what I'm trying to do, is serve as that, the strategic partner, the trusted advisor, so that I can be there for them when they need it.
Yeah. So you mentioned several skills possibly. So you talk about listening, very important to them, what you listen to. And especially I think in research, that can get to a point where you have something like, I have no clue what you're talking about, because they're so deep into a field. Is that sometimes a challenge for you?
Oh, it definitely is. But what I have found is that even when I'm talking to someone, say in neuroscience, we have an up and coming neuroscience department right now. It's fresh new baby, but it is well beyond my understanding. My academic degrees are in education and agriculture, so it's pretty beyond. But what I have found is that the people I'm talking to are so passionate about what they're talking about they want to explain it to you. They want to explain it to you at whatever level you're at. And so I love that. So it's almost like I'm taking their class without having to be in their class, and I'm not being graded for it. So it's fantastic because I love to learn. But sometimes even when they explain it to me, I'll go back to my office and I'll chat GPT, can you explain this to me as if I'm 4 years old? That way I can understand it a little bit more. That way next time we have a conversation, I can be a bit more, it's not so much of a one-sided conversation. I can actually engage a bit more.
Understanding better what they're doing, does that help you better to understand what they need from an IT perspective in this case as well then?
Yes, absolutely. It also helps me understand what things would be nice to have and what things are I have to have. Because, sometimes researchers think I have to have this specific thing or this specific brand of thing. But in reality, we can actually get it done in this way. And I know we can get it done in this way because I've taken the time to understand what work you're working on. And sometimes they accept that and that's great. We found an alternative solution. Other times we have further dialogue about why that one specific thing is better than another specific thing. And it's a learning opportunity for me because I'm not the expert in the field, they are. And so I'm able to listen to them and understand. And it's not that we always go with that specific thing, but I'm able to listen to them and understand why one would be better than the other. And I learn a lot from our researchers.
Yeah. So how difficult it is to explain to your peers in IT what they're trying to accomplish?
It's actually been quite difficult, mainly because I speak a different language than they do as well, right? So I'm kind of floating in between the two worlds, and so I have always worked in a student-facing role previous to this, so I was very integrated into campus and all the goings on. And then when I got over to IT, it almost seemed like something separate from the university where, the sole focus wasn't on the students. It was on everyone because everyone needs IT. But in my previous role, the sole focus was on the students. So it's difficult for me to have conversations sometimes where, my whole focus is on the students and the researchers understand that part. But sometimes there's a larger picture that I'm not seeing in IT, and I'm a very small part of the larger picture. But everyone thinks that their part is larger than it is.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that. So sometimes I have to dial my enthusiasm back a little bit because I might be super excited about something, and they're just looking at me like, no, actually the firewall went down, something with infrastructure, words that I don't understand, and so I have to dial back a little bit.
It's a difficult role, being that the relationship manager between two groups that don't really sometimes understand each other. I mean, although they're both sometimes very technology driven, but it's very difficult to get them then to understand each other positions. So there's a lot of empathy and all those kind of things that they need to have for each other. A little bit of a different topic. You said, and you mentioned earlier, you're neurodivergent, and you're in a field, BRM, that is fundamentally about relationships, communication, and navigating complexity. How has being neurodivergent shaped the way you approach that work?
So I've thought about this quite a bit, and I think it takes a little bit of background. So whenever I first got the call, I was called to apply for this position, and our Chief Information Security Officer, which is who I report through, he said, "You'd be great for this position." And I read it, and I was like, "Corey, I don't think I can do this job. I don't know what you're talking about." And he, kept on persistent. I was like, "Okay, I'll apply for it. I will." And so then I got the job, and then I was worried because it is all about building relationships, and I'm very great at masking, so I'm very great at behaving the way I think people are expected to behave in a certain situation for the most part, but it's actually exhausting. It's very, very exhausting. And it wasn't until I had another previous supervisor of mine let me know that I don't have to warn people, right, about who I am. I don't have to warn people about my neurodivergence. I can educate them. I can let them know, but it doesn't have to be a warning because that's how I would always phrase it. Like, I'm a little different, right? I need a little bit of special things, but I promise I'm worth it. I'm worth the extra effort. If it is extra effort, I promise I'm worth it. So after I had that conversation with her, I stopped masking as much. And so that's whenever I felt like it was easier for me to have the relationships because I didn't have to remember what person I was pretending to be whenever I was talking to another person. I was just being myself, whether that fit into the mold or not, usually not. My authenticity, I think, is something that is due to my neurodivergence. I can't turn it off.
Yeah, and you shouldn't turn it off, to be honest. But everyone is masking a little bit. But from an to be able to be seen as, okay, that's what they call neurotypical or normal person. Masking is something that I think a lot of people are doing, and that's for me, and I think something to always address. That's difficult though. It's interesting because I'm by nature an introvert, and I'm in a very extrovert role, and it's tiring. I recognize that at conferences or at sessions, etc. I have some like, okay, I can play the extrovert role, but I just need to re-energize after that. So that's, but it still must be very difficult sometimes for you to after the day of work, that you have something like, okay, what do I do to relax? Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is, especially if, I had a lot of meetings that day, or maybe I was meeting with someone that I think doesn't like my authenticity as much, because I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's totally fine. I'm more of a cup of coffee anyway, because I have a lot of energy when I talk with people. But, typically if I had a meeting with someone, even if I really, really enjoy that person, afterwards, I'm just, I'm completely drained, and I just need a minute, just give me a minute. But I'm really good at being a professional extrovert. So whenever I need to be an extrovert, I can turn it on. But I'm a lot like you. I like being alone.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? So sometimes you have some. I just want to sit in a quiet room and don't talk to anyone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I came across a line from Dr. Lidmila Proslova in Psychology Today that really stuck with me. She wrote that autism, in this case, autism stereotypes do not include leadership, yet autistic people lead anyway. And I thought that was a very interesting statement. Have you, I'm not sure if you've heard it or read this one, but can you respond to that one, maybe?
Well, I can understand how people who live on the spectrum are probably given the message that leadership isn't right for them, and that's not necessarily the role that they're going to thrive in. And someone said something the other day, and they said, function within your gifts. But I think maybe not everyone knows what their gifts are, and sometimes their gifts aren't packaged as gifts. I never really thought of myself as a leader because I never thought that my flavor was the right kind for leadership. But what I have found is that sometimes the people who are on the spectrum are the quiet leaders or maybe reluctant leaders, but sometimes those are the best kind to have because they're not the ones that are necessarily seeking for power or authority. They just want to do the things they're doing. And if other people like it, that's fantastic and super exciting. And if they want to follow, that's even great. I mean, even better because I get to do things that I really like to do and talk to people about things that I like to talk about. And if people, buy into that and like that, that's fantastic. And it's just kind of, I think if we can accept that people on the spectrum have a place in the professional world as well, regardless of where they're at on the spectrum, then we can also accept that they have a place in leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of entrepreneurs are actually on the spectrum because it sometimes is easier to actually have your own leadership position or create that own leadership position because it's easier than trying to comply with the rules that we see in some leadership. Leadership is I think anyone can step into that leadership role, and I think more people are in a leadership role than they sometimes recognize. And for me, the whole relationship side is a leadership role because you have to lead the conversations to the right results. You have to collaborate. So for me, it's very part of that, and I never thought about it that. We sometimes see that we say, okay, that person is not a leader, but you can be a leader in so many different ways again. That's, I think, the key part. You mentioned here that you don't see yourself as a leader necessarily. Can you explain that, elaborate that a little bit more?
Well, I think it's because my brain is trapped in the traditional sense of leadership that comes with supervising people. Right. I've always thought that, in order to be a leader, especially in higher education, you have to supervise people formally. I really don't want to supervise people. I've supervised people in the past. It's not a gift. It's not. Please no. And so I've and in higher education, which is the only industry I've ever worked in, so it's the only one I can necessarily speak about. In order to be to advance, for the most part, you have to supervise people. And so I've always just assumed that traditional leadership, as far as the title and things like that, is not really going to be on the path for me, because I don't want to do that part. I don't want to do the supervision part. But whenever I think about the other types of leadership, I do feel like that there are things that I'm passionate about, that I'm able to speak with authority on, as long as my confidence is there, that I feel like people listen to me whenever I talk. And so I think having people listen to you and being a person that listens is a type of leadership, like you said, building the relationships and being able to sustain relationships, not just have a one-off conversation, I think is a type of leadership, because it's relationships are two-sided. They are two-sided, right? But there has to be one to initiate it and sustain it. And everyone has so many other things going on that I need to make sure that I'm, there.
You're absolutely in a leadership position. Let me be clear. Leadership, because you still have to get people to collaborate. You still have to get them to go to a certain result. And that still requires leadership capabilities. And I think we sometimes see leaders more as managers. The management side you might not like. On the other hand, everyone has different ways of doing things. And I think when I look at things, I can say, okay, this is my pathway. This is how I'm going to actually address this. Someone else can get to the same result with a totally different pathway. And from a leadership perspective, I always have something like, you need to help people to find their own pathways and making sure that they actually do that. So supervising people sometimes is letting them figure that out, but that is scary as well, because you lose control. You have something like, hey, this is not going to happen in the right way, I'm sure. And then you have something like, well, they did actually do it in a way that I would have never done this, and they still got results. And then it's difficult. It's absolutely difficult. And I think when we look at the standard leader with the supervisor role, it's quite often like, okay, you do your performance evaluations, you tell people what to do, how to do it, you sometimes micromanage, etc. The ones that are thrown into a position like that and start micromanaging and start doing that, they become very frustrating for the people that actually report to them as well. We can do things in so many different ways, in so many and get great results, and sometimes results that we didn't even have before that. It's great. I love this part of the relationship management side, and I talk to any BRM or any leader I talk to. I say, you need to have relationship skills. I always have something like, you're a leader. It doesn't matter what you do. You're a leader. And you might not have people reporting to you, but you still can be a leader in everything you do. Good. Now, you are going to present at BRM Connect. And the presentation title is called Network Weaving and Neuroinclusion, which was a very intriguing title. Now, if someone actually hasn't heard of that, can you explain a little bit about the core idea? You don't have to go into the whole presentation. That's this is for the people that want to listen to that. Please come to BRM Connect. But I love the fact that you're actually bringing this topic to BRM Connect. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, it kind of started, I'm co-presenting with Angela Swindler. She is with the city of Austin. So she's bringing the network weaving part of it, and I'm bringing the neurodiversity part of it. And we brought it together. But basically, it comes down to recognizing patterns and connecting the dots. Whenever you're talking with people, being able to listen to a person who maybe doesn't know another person, and then connecting those two people, but then finding the thrill in the connection, I think is a pretty big deal. So a lot of it is about being able to recognize those patterns.
Okay, so that's the patterns in the relationships. Who do you need to connect with? But that's in a complex world that we are in, and human interactions are very complex. That's a kind of close to sense making, trying to figure out what is the best way to actually approach this, etc. That's very interesting. Do you see that in your work daily, that you constantly need to connect people, or did you work long enough now within the research that you know everyone? But
I don't know everyone yet. So Tarleton, we're on the trajectory to become an R1 research institution, so the top tier designation. And so we've started a bunch of new departments. And so we have a bunch of new faculty. And so I know a lot of the faculty because I've been here a long time, but I don't know a lot of the new faculty. And what I love, one of my favorite things about research, and I conduct my own research. I have a couple publications out there working on it. But one of my favorite things is interdisciplinary research. So if I can connect someone in our neuroscience department, for example, with someone in our humanities department of any kind, I think that is beautiful, especially because I have kind of a soft spot for humanities research. I think sometimes they're kind of left in the dust sometimes. And so if I can find that interdisciplinary connection, it's so exciting to be able to connect those people, even if it doesn't produce a publication. If it produces a single conversation, then I think that opens the doors and opens minds that maybe wouldn't have been opened otherwise.
When you look at the teams you work with, the people you work with, and new faculty members, maybe existing ones, do you recognize, do you try to build teams that other people actually get involved? I mean, I know you're very passionate around those type of things, but are you trying from your own mindset, your shift basically, to include people in everything you do, or to get other people basically that maybe are also neurodivergent, that you actually get them included in there? You help them with that? I mean, because I have the feeling that you do a lot of that. I heard some mentions of that, but I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that. What do you do to actually get to pull people into conversations where you feel that it's difficult to get them into that conversation?
So a conversation about neurodivergence?
No, just basically the standard conversation, but you recognize that certain people sometimes are a little bit not included in there. They don't do the work, or they step aside because they feel that they shouldn't be part of the team. How do you include people in that team to make it happen, to make that result happen?
I think you have to be very intentional about the team you build, because there are going to be some people who work better with people like that and some people who do not. And so what I like to do is I share about myself a lot. And so I think that really helps, because it's like, oh, okay, there's someone else like me, or, a little bit like me, or, there's another weird person, so it makes things okay. For them to be themselves as well. And so I found that even when working with students, I share a lot about myself, and my journey and kind of my experience and what I've been through and the things that I don't like doing, but I do them anyway, and the kind of where it's gotten me and the path that I have taken. And sometimes things that are uncomfortable, if I do them anyway and I do them in my own way, or sometimes I do them in the way that is expected to be done. Sometimes I do have to do that. Then, I get to places where I want to be. I get to the place where I am now. And so I think that is typically how I do it. I'm trying to empower other people by telling them about myself. That doesn't sound very right, but kind of sharing my experience so that I can try and relate to them a little bit more.
And you mentioned something, and I've encountered that, and I'll give a little bit of a personal background on this. I have some family members that are autistic, ADHD. In my whole life, there were certain times where I couldn't stand it. It's so difficult. They were doing things differently, and I found that very difficult to work with. And now, the more I read up on neurodivergence, the more I read up on this and listen to podcasts, etc., around this, the more I get the understanding that I need to do this. You must encounter people that just don't want to work with certain people.
Yes, I absolutely do. There's people who don't want to work with me, believe it or not. But sometimes they don't have a choice.
Yeah, but I mean, you tell more about yourself. I mean, the challenge then sometimes is to go into masking and try to behave differently, which is not your authentic self sometimes. Some people actually can see through that. But it's how do you address that when you see this in a team, and you see people actually pulling back and saying, I don't want to work with that person because I don't understand them. Is it possible to educate them? Is it possible to get them to engage with each other? I mean, it's a very difficult position, especially in the relationship management. And sometimes you have to get people to work together, and you have something like, they don't want to work together for whatever reason. Yeah, it doesn't have to be neurodivergence, but how do I do that? Yeah, how do I get them to work together?
Well, I wish I had the right answer for that, but typically what I do is I serve in the same role as I serve for IT and research, is I serve as a translator between the two, because everyone's on the team for a reason, right? And so if we have found ourselves together on this team, everyone is here for a reason. And so it could be that one just doesn't understand the other, it could be one doesn't like the other one, but we're all professionals here. And so that's normally what I lean on, is that we're professionals and we usually have a shared goal. If we don't have a shared goal, then we need to figure out what our goals are. And so I think listening to both sides, but if there's a person who doesn't want to work with someone else, I really need to understand why and try and figure out if there's something that I can do to try and soften that relationship to make it to where we can reach our shared goals.
Yeah, those are very difficult conversations, though.
Yes, they definitely are, especially if I'm feeling a little connected to the reason they don't want to work with that other person. Sometimes I can get a little excited about things, and sometimes I can come off like I'm angry about things, but I'm not. I'm just excited about whatever it is. And so sometimes I've had to really dial my excitement back, especially if I realize that the reason they don't like something is they're doing it because they're neurodivergent. If I happen to know about that person, I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. And I don't disclose for people, and I don't, I'm not going to out anyone or anything like that. But like, you don't understand. I do the same exact thing, and we've worked together for 13 years. And as far as I know, you like me just fine. But this is a highly capable person. We just need to look beyond this. But I rely heavily on the fact that we're professionals with a shared goal. And ultimately, in higher education, we are all here for the students and making sure that they're successful. And so typically, we do have that ultimate overarching shared goal.
Yeah. So let's go to something different. I'm going to ask you something different in this case. What do you see in your role as BRM and as a leader as one of your most successful things you accomplished?
So we actually just recently published our IT annual report, and it started out as a BRM impact report, similar to what Purdue University does. But it kind of transformed into an IT report because we really wanted some more transparency. And what I have found is, and what I communicated to my leadership, is that before I started working over here, IT was, can you help me fix this computer thing? It's broken. I already unplugged it and plugged it back in, and it didn't work. And so realizing that it's so much more than that. It's just the vastness of the importance of IT to any organization, but specifically to higher education, and specifically to this university, is so misunderstood. And so I was very proud because it had to go through so many different people, and everyone has an opinion on it, and we want it worded certain ways. And then we have our marketing and communication to make sure I use the right shade of purple, and we refer to Tarleton in the right way and things like that. So that was actually just recently published. So that is probably one of the things that I'm most proud of as far as my role here as a BRM in IT, because I really want to be more transparent with IT and what we're doing and the importance, because I think if people can realize how important IT is, there would be less frustration and less friction all around.
Yeah, and you're on a mission. You have a purpose. You're great with doing that. I'm sure that people actually will love to see what you've done with that report. That's a lot of people actually are asking for those kind of things. I hear that. I know City of Hamilton had done one, and I was just talking to someone else, etc. as well. Good. I'm going to ask you to react to some words. I had one in there that we already talked about, which is masking. So I'm not going to do that one again. Let me just, let me do these. Mondays.
Well, I think it's like Garfield, the cartoon cat. He hates Mondays. But I think mainly, I think Garfield is what I think of my immediate reaction.
Your immediate reaction is Garfield. That's awesome. The cat, possibly, yes. Small talk.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah,
that's uncomfortable.
I know it needs to happen, and I know it's something that is very valuable in networking. Like when we go to conferences, small talk is important. But I tend to get when I'm uncomfortable, I tend to get very chatty. So I'm not bad at small talk. I can talk about anything, I promise. But I feel like I'm being annoying to people. And so that's why I dread small talk, because I'm trying so hard to walk the line between I'm not doing all the talking, don't talk about myself the whole time, and things like that, and trying to make sure that I'm aware of the other person. Because, like I said, I could talk about anything. I could talk about a rock if we wanted to, but I need to make sure the other person is in the conversation too. And so I have a hard time with that, especially with small talk, because it is on such a smaller scale, and there's a limited amount of time that you do small talk. So I struggle with it a little bit.
That's from my own perspective as well. Sometimes I walk away from those network conversations and I have some I said way too much. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have that. That's what you're going through afterwards as well? And feel
definitely. And then I'm like,
uncomfortable.
why did I say that? I overshared. Like, what? They don't care about that. Why would I talk about that? But I've gotten really good at saying I can't do anything about things that are beyond my control because I already said it. So I'll just try not to say it again next time.
Yeah, I know. I've noticed that as well. I sometimes have to take it level back and just basically listen, and it's difficult because especially in those small talk things, you hear something, you immediately have, okay, I need to tell this as well. And I've had situations where I have something like I get triggered by a certain thing they said, and then I go into a story that by the looks of it has nothing to do with what they just said, and then I actually get to the point where I have something like, why am I actually telling this? Yeah, why did I take the conversation to a totally different thing? But yeah, it's sometimes you actually get those kind of things. It's
I do the same thing. I actually do it while you're asking me questions. I will try and remind myself what the question was that you asked, because sometimes I will get off track and then forget what the actual question was, even in this small amount of time that we're talking. So I have to remind myself what the question was at the end and hopefully remember to circle back to the question.
Oh, don't worry. I would have gotten you back to certain things, but I also enjoy just the conversation because it flows a little bit more natural then. And yes, if you go to certain different topics, I mean, that's fine. But it depends on the situation. Yeah, in a networking site. So we both, I think I don't want to talk for you, but I dread sometimes the network receptions at a conference.
Yes, absolutely. I'd much rather just go hide in my hotel room. But I know that's not the reason that we're there. And, I know that the university is paying for me to be here to get the right things,
Do you feel that as well with activities that need to be done during a conference? Do you feel that there as well, that it sometimes is difficult to say, yeah, I want to do this? I mean, I know these people that the moment there is an activity or so that includes the whole group, that they immediately stand up, they immediately start doing things, and you have some and I have some, well, some of us possibly have something like, no, I'm just going to hide here for a moment and observe what is happening. Is that, do you feel that sometimes as well, that you sometimes rather observe than be active in an activity?
So I'm of two minds on this subject. So I'm a very good student. I am the one that raised my hand every single time. If you needed someone to say something, I am going to say something. Even if you don't need me to say anything anymore, I need you to tell me that I have an A in the class and I will stop talking. But whenever we do activities, like we're in a session and we're doing activities, then I count to three. And then if no one volunteers, then I get up and I start, okay, we're going to do these things. Who wants to do this? Who wants to do that? I don't necessarily enjoy doing that. It's something that I feel like I have to do it. It's almost a compulsion sometimes. And it's just like whenever people ask for feedback, I count to three so that I don't talk over people and I don't talk too much. But sometimes I count 1, 2, 3, and it's way too quick. So I really need to count to like 30 maybe. But I would rather at times, looking back on it, I would rather sit back and observe and, hopefully someone else will take the lead on it and do the things that I stood up and did. But I get so anxious about things like that. And I want that person's session to go well. And I want us all to get something out of this activity that they spent their time on. And so I will, if someone else hasn't done it, I will stand up and, divvy up the roles or, who wants to do this, who wants to do that. I will do that. But I would rather sit back and watch.
Yeah. It's interesting because and I'm just bringing this back to relationship management. As a business relationship manager, you quite often see that there are certain people immediately jumping in and other people actually taking a step back and trying to actually get those people to all give their opinion share their thoughts is a skill that you need to have from a business relationship management perspective. And if you know for yourself that you immediately jump in, I always was the one that asked questions, but when there's activities that certain activities, icebreakers, for instance, at the start of a session, I hate. I just don't want to do them, and that's just me. And I have something like, okay, well, but how do I include those people sometimes? Yeah, can I do things differently? Okay, I have two more words. One is boundaries.
Right. That's pretty difficult, I think. I used to have a much harder time, but I am much better about work not being my entire life and not being all consuming. So I used to work was everything. I would work. I would stay at the office. I would, check emails at midnight. I would do all of that. But it was because I was overcompensating for my weirdness. I was overcompensating for what I felt like was extra work for my supervisor to have to accommodate for. But then I had the conversation with that previous supervisor, and she said, "You don't have to do that." And it made me understand that I'm valuable just the way I am. I'm valuable, and I can be valuable 8 to 5. If it's only 8 to 5, I don't have to be valuable at midnight to work as well. And so boundaries have been difficult in the past for me, but I've gotten much better now that I don't feel like I have to constantly be making up for something that I feel like I'm lacking. Honestly, due to neurodivergence, because I always feel like I'm a burden in some way, but I've gotten much better about that. And so I don't feel like I have to overwork myself in order to make up for something that I thought I was lacking. So boundaries are difficult, but getting much better at them. But I think they're very important.
They're very important, yeah, absolutely. Okay, the last one is a little bit weird, maybe, which I like to do. Music.
I love music. So I have named several of my dogs after musicians. So it's something that I can turn on and I don't have to think about it, especially if it's a song that I just know. I can be relaxing while something else is going on, because sometimes I have a hard time relaxing if nothing else is going on, because it's like I'm supposed to be doing something right now. Like I don't understand why I have nothing to do. But if I'm listening to music, then that keeps my mind going while I am relaxing. So I think music is very important to me anyway, and I think it's a lot like people, right? There's something for everyone.
Yeah. Any particular kind of music that is better for relaxing than other things for you?
Oh, for me, I'm a classic rock person. I like Ronnie James Dio. He's really more metal, but the band Dio was probably one of my favorites. I also like Greta Van Fleet and things like that. But I also like Megadeth. So I mean, it really just depends on where we're at. But I'm more of a classic rock person.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I listen to some of the metal as well, but I have a very wide range of music that I use for different situations, and it's really weird. But I do find that I find new music, and then I have to listen to it for weeks in a row, and then I suddenly can't listen to it anymore, and then I will just maybe a year later or so I come back to that. But it's at this moment I'm. There's some I listen to a lot of British music, and one of them is a newer one, Ray, which I love the whole album, and I listen to it, and I know that it's going to get to a point where I have something like, I can't listen to this anymore. But it's certain things I keep coming back to. So, and then you suddenly have it in a list, and you have something, oh yeah, I haven't listened to that for a while. So, music is important, I think, for a lot of people to relax or also just background, etc. So that's great. Before we wrap up, do you have any questions for me?
So you did mention that you have some relatives that are on the spectrum, and that maybe is what sparked your interest in neurodivergence and this kind of research. What do you think has been the most kind of epiphany? Have you had any epiphanies since you've started doing the research around neurodivergence?
I think the biggest thing I found is that I have a lot of the traits that I had some like, yeah, okay, I can see myself doing that. Or I have this. I'm currently in a situation where, I mean, mainly in the ADHD area, it's difficult sometimes to focus on certain things. I want to do everything at the same time. So I have 5 different projects on the go, and don't finish any of those if I'm not careful. So I have times where that is a challenge. So I recognize some of the things for myself. I'm not formally diagnosed. I think at this moment I'm getting to the point where I recognize more what is happening, and I can better cope with that. So understanding it better has caused me to cope with it better, and I think that's the key. And I think seeing someone as doing things differently is now like, okay, well, they need to apparently do it in a different way, or they react differently. So let me just step back and see how it goes. And it's still not easy sometimes, but I now look back at how I done things 20 years ago, and I'm like, oh, I never should have done that way, because I realize now what the situation was and how I had to actually do things differently. So yeah, that's basically what I'm that's for me the most important part. Learning about it helped me to better cope with that, and especially in the bringing it back to relationship management, I think that is important. Recognizing it. When I started talking about this with BRM, who said, "Yeah, no, I have ADHD," he said, I have to ask my manager to give me very clear assignments, yeah, and don't bring it too wide, because I will give the right answer instead of the answer that you need. I will bring everything in that I can. And said I can be a week away and researching all of this, while it was just like, okay, can you look at this for an hour or so? And I think that is for some recognizing that you need to guide people in the relationship to say, hey, look, you just need to do that. And I just want you to focus on that. And if you deliver that, then it's good. So that's for me what I've seen. Yeah.
I love that. And whenever I went to your session, I was so excited because my research interest in my dissertation is about disability culture. But I was worried that I would have to leave that behind in taking this new role, because where's the relationship between the two? And then I saw it and I was like, oh my goodness, we can bring it all together. I can bring it back. Like, this is fantastic. And so I was just thrilled. And so I'm kind of marrying the two things. You know, I'm still new to BRM, but it's something that I'm almost like, well, I think I was made for this. I really, really do. And now I can bring in, you know, disability as culture, neurodivergence, acceptance, you know, diversity of thought, and universal design. I know you wrote a short piece, "We're All Wired Differently," about universal design. And so I love universal design. It seems so simple. It seems like it makes so much sense. But then whenever you explain it in a way where it benefits everyone, then everyone's just like, wow, that's so great, you know? And so there's the opportunities to be able to marry the two, you know, the two worlds of things that I'm passionate about. It really opened up whenever I went to your session, because it almost gave me permission to, you know, put those things together now. So I just so thankful for that.
Yeah, and it is interesting because, and this comes from Dr. Praslova as well, is the accommodations we do, and then when we say, okay, we need to have an accommodation for this person or for that person because that's when they work better. And then she said, well, what are glasses? What is coffee? It's all accommodations that are part of the neurotypical part that we are accepting. But the moment you get outside of that, it's suddenly an accommodation and it's something special, and we're not allowed to do that. And when you look at that, you have something like, yeah, that's right. I mean, it's why do we accommodate certain people with certain things and other people? No, that's either based on there's cost involved, or there is something that we can't do. And I'm like, no, everyone can add value to that. And I think that's the key part. So this is great. Any other questions for me or not?
No, I don't think so. I think this has been fantastic, and I really, really appreciate you talking with me. I did want to add one thing, though, that I would not be as successful as I am as a BRM if it weren't for my supervisor. His name is Corey Shaw. So if he does listen to this, he's fantastic, and he's a great example of how to be a supervisor of someone who does need things a little bit differently. I don't know how he learned it. He may have to teach me sometime, but he's a big reason why I'm able to be so successful, because he's able to look beyond the traditional, this is the way things have to be, we got to do things this way. So I'm very, very thankful for him.
I think you need to thank yourself as well for all the work you've done yourself. And I know that's sometimes difficult, but I think you're that star that helps people to work and get results, and in your own way. And I think that should be recognized as well. So good. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. It was a great session. I really enjoyed this. So for everyone who tuned into this podcast, thanks for spending some time with us. If this sparks something for you, we'd love to hear about it. That is if you have more questions around that, I'm sure Jericha will be able to connect with you, or I can connect with you. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time at another episode at BRM Cafe, and take care.
This episode is brought to you by Lead the Pack Consulting, leadership coaching for organizational relationship management. We help people to lead and succeed. Contact us for more details.